Right, on Thursday night, we saw the final Misfits boxing show of this year with the Qatari SUPERCARD. And here today to talk all things Misfits boxing with me is one of the men that was there from the start of not only Misfits boxing, by the way, YouTube boxing. I suppose it could sort of make him YouTube royalty here. Definitely YouTube royalty, YouTube boxing royalty. It is my friend Brian, the true Geordie.
Cheers,
Brian, what's happening, bro?
All right, mate. I'm just having a morning coffee here. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Because me and you, we'll do text pretty much throughout the whole fucking event anyway. But we haven't really chewed this up yet. So I'm interested to see what you thought of the event. Where do you want to start, bro?
Let's start off with the big boys. We had Chase DEMOOR in there against KELZ. Obviously, Chase DEMOOR coming off the back of a loss to Ed Matthews. No, I'm joking. Chase DEMOOR coming off the back of, I think, of a win in his last fight out. And this one was for a title. I think Tempo Arts was the champion before. He vacated the title. KELZ was a guy that was pretty much unknown, although I did box on the same card as him in Newcastle. Big guy, big puncher. But very much a guy who's new to the sport and, you know, still finding his feet. How did you see that one play out? Because I didn't think it was the easiest on the eye to watch to start off the main card, if I'm honest.
I was massively disappointed in this because I actually think that both guys are really good athletes. Like, you look at them, one of them's built like a fucking brick shithouse in this KELZ. He's massive, right? And you think you must have some serious power. Clearly, he's got a knockout on his record and showed a bit of resilience in that fight as well, so fair fucks. And then Chase is a good all-round athlete. You know, probably be great at anything other than boxing, right? Ironically, I think the kid's, you know, and he's fucking hilarious, right? I think he's got... He, as a person behind the scenes who just talks to mums and helps them out with a few things, I'm like, this kid has all the charisma. But in the fight, I thought it would be a bit of a war because they're both quite fit for big lads as well. But honestly, watching it, I just thought it looks like neither of you have ever had a boxing lesson in your entire life. And I couldn't understand why, because I think they've both shown a bit more beforehand. Obviously, they're both a bit green, but they both showed more than that before. And I just was like, I don't know why this isn't going anywhere. But it really was one of the worst fights in Misfits history. And I think, you know, I say that only because I think they're both capable of a lot more. And I think they both need to watch that back and go, I think they need to question the coaching that they're getting. And I'm not saying that means they should leave, but they need to think about it because there's just things that they're doing that just... You know, man, like you shouldn't be doing when you're in a ring. Like that's the stuff you do when you're just learning, and it's like they've not been taught anything.
Yeah, I think it was his fifth fight, something like that. So again, like I always compare it to the background I came from. Listen, there were way less eyeballs, way less, you know, media frenzy around the background I was on the unlicensed scene. But in terms of the level when you're coming through, it's very similar in a way, if not a little bit higher than the entry level at Misfits boxing. And after 5 fights, yeah, you'd really want to see yourself making more improvements.
I'm talking just like basic footwork, basic throwing of a jab, basic like 1-2s down the middle.
Yeah. Look at the opponent rather than the top of the arena and stuff like that as you're throwing your punches. But at the same time, listen, he went in there, Chase DEMOOR. I did think that he was the rightful winner, if you want to say that. I don't think either man comes away with their stock raised too much. At the same time as that, in terms of KELZ, it's a big jump to have one fight and then straight away go into a title fight. So fair play to him. But I think it says a lot about the lack of the actual depth in that heavyweight division. I'm
glad Chase won because he's a great character. And I actually thought he beat that Tempo kid. Like, without a doubt, he won that fight. And so I think we've got the rightful champion. But they just they're both massively capable. It's just about getting the hours in the gym. And we'll see what they're capable of.
Yeah. Next up on the card, we had a fight that I had A lot of interest in a fight that I actually, mate. Do you know what? If I'm completely transparent with you, you know, like from when I was texting you and what, it was a hard watch for me. Like it's always, I said to you, it's like watching your ex-missus of another man or something like that,
Weird,
watching that lightweight tournament final. Because there's always just that feeling of like, oh fuck, man, like I should be here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was an indictment on the card. Like it was really good for the card, I should say, because for the level that we saw in the fight prior to then go to the level that we saw.
We needed that.
Yeah, from little CRACRA and YUDDY.
Respect the CRACRA and YUDDY. You know, as much as I criticise CRACRA for the way he fought you, there's no criticising his level of ability. I've never, ever once said he's not a great boxer. And they're both great lads. And I think, like, they're both, you know, along with yourself, you know, the most talented boxers. We talk about pound for pound, like KSI and all these. Let's be real here. You, YUDDY, CRACRA, we're going pound for pound and influence our crossover boxing. You guys are the top. You know what I mean? In terms of the skill level, and that naturally happens in the lighter weight classes. So it was a great level of skill in there for sure.
Yeah, I think watching it myself, I scored it 4-1. I gave YUDDY that third round, and I texted you after that third round, and I said, this is YUDDY's now, and I understood that obviously YUDDY, you know, had all 3 rounds to win after CRACRA had won the first 2. But what I know about CRACRA from my experience of sharing a ring with him is once you do get him hurt, you know, he doesn't really recover all that well. I'm not saying that, you know, look, like I didn't do enough myself to be able to stake a claim to saying, once I got him hurt, I was able to do this and that. But I feel like in our fight, you saw that once the tide turned, it did turn. And I'm very confident that it would have stayed that way. Do you know what I mean? So when I saw that, not specifically YUDDY hurt him, but YUDDY found his feet in the fight, started to walk forward, started to put the pressure on him, that's when I went, okay, this is where YUDDY swings that fight. But fair fucking play to little CRACRA, man. Comes out, recoups, gets that 4th round. And by the 5th round, he pretty much knew that he could do a little bit more so what he did in our fight, which was go on the back foot and just look to counter because he knew that he had racked up enough points at that time, didn't he?
Yeah, I think YUDDY did not have the gas to carry on putting that level of pressure on the way you could. You know, he faded very quickly after that 3rd round, and I thought, wow. I mean, on the one hand, you've exposed that weakness again that we've seen in CRACRA's game, which there aren't many, to be fair to him. But you just couldn't keep the pressure on him, and CRACRA, the speed of that lad and the cleverness of him to keep outpointing him, clinched it. And I thought, 4-1, the rightful winner. He goes on now to fight DEEN the Great. Before we get on to that, though, I do want to say when I was watching it, for me, I know you've kind of, you know, you've been annoyed at this defeat that you got, but I couldn't help but think that your stock went up again from watching that. And I'm not just saying this because you're my mate. I think a lot of people at home would have thought, you didn't do that to Joey Knight. You didn't 4-1 Joey Knight. And when you finish a fight, the way you finished the fight with CRACRA, where you taken that 4th round, and then the 5th round, you were, I mean, the guy literally barely threw a punch. You were all over him. It leaves a lasting impression on the audience, you know. And had you won maybe round 1, that would have been enough, right? So, whereas with YUDDY, he clean sweep that, like, pretty much aside from that 1 round. And I just thought, well, really, you're the only person who we've seen CRACRA in there with who's really made him look that vulnerable. So, it gives me a lot of excitement for your future. What do you make of the matchup between CRACRA and DEEN? Because that's an exciting fight, man. I think they're 2 really good boxers.
I don't think there is a matchup, to be honest. I don't think DEEN's got the bottle to fight anyone that he really realises is actually a challenge. I don't think he would have fought YUDDY had YUDDY come through. I don't think he'll fight CRACRA. I think he'll try and worm his way out of it somehow. I know they're talking about it for that Fury against Till undercard. Just before I touch on that, big respect to Yuddy Gang, you know, like, I actually feel like in defeat, he can come away with his head held really high. And much like you said, like, in this weight division, between the likes of me, Dean, CRACRA, Yuddy, maybe Fox when his time comes and whatnot, Argentinian King, all of these guys, Ace Musa.
Yeah, it's a great division.
I think we will all swap losses and wins amongst each other. I think it's horses for courses, different styles match up differently. I am no more or less confident going into a potential fight with, let's say, Yuddy Gang than I would have been before that, even if he had a won as opposed to as he had a loss. So I think that the one thing I'd want to say is it's a great weight division, man. As for Dean, listen, Dean's a man who is very, very different in person to how he acts online and acts on camera. I met Dean in Leeds. Dean ain't that guy that people think he is on the internet. He ain't that guy, and he doesn't have that same sort of energy in person, yeah? So you can see that, say, for example, I was speaking about Dean's name for a very long time. The reason being I was talking about Dean is because I wanted to fight him, and I was in a tournament that ultimately was going to give you the opportunity at the end of it to get in there with Dean. That's why the tournament was made. That's why I was talking about Dean. And for 6 odd months when I was in that tournament, spoke about Dean on many occasions, man. Didn't have a bite back. Did not have a bite back. The second that I dropped a decision by 1 point to little CRACRA, what does Dean do? He gets on Twitter and starts talking shit. Never mentioned Joey Knight's name in the same breath as me. Listen, I'd smash Dean the Great to fucking pieces if me and him ever got in a ring together. And everyone knows that. Dean knows that his time is up. And that is why he's tweeting during a fight last night saying, nobody's interested, nobody cares about it. And then liking comments on tweets when every now and again the odd person agrees with him and goes, yeah, you're better than these guys. Dean's done nothing. Dean's done nothing in Misfits. He's had a couple of entertaining fights with Walid Sharks, but what level is Walid Sharks at? And it's very, very funny how Dean doesn't see the value in a CRACRA fight, in a Yuddy fight, in a fight with me. He sees the value in an Adam Salah fight. He wanted the Adam Salah fight. Why did he want that? Because in my opinion, when I just listed those lightweight guys, Ace Musa, Fox, the G, Argentinian King, you didn't hear me name Adam Salah, did you? And that's because he is not of that level, my friend. Dean knows that, and I know that. And when Dean comes up against CRACRA, if they can manage to tie his hands and drag him kicking and screaming to the ring, Dean will lose every second of every round against little CRACRA. Little CRACRA will box in the exact same way that he boxed against me, as opposed to doing a mixture of the two is what I thought he did against Yuddy last night. And when little CRACRA boxes like that, Dean will not have the answers for that. And he won't be able to make the sort of mid-fight adjustments that I was able to make and turn the tide on little CRACRA. So that whole pullback right-hand counter that's got Dean through his career so far will not work against little CRACRA. And I don't see the fight happening myself. I don't think the fella's got enough bottle to get in there and actually fight him.
Well, I hope that we do see it. I do think it'll be a great fight. What a fucking promo that was, though. Fuck me. If you ever fight this kid, they're going to have to put that in the fucking in the trailer.
I'll never fight him. Dean's a fucking pussy and he won't get anywhere near me. He won't come anywhere near me in a ring and he won't say shit to me when I see him in person, as he didn't in League. Moving on. Wow. No, seriously though, just as a neutral, because I know that you respect Dean's skill set, and I know that you, many a time from me and you speaking, you do really rate Dean as a fighter. Mm-hmm. How do you see that one going between Dean and CRACRA if it was to happen?
Well, the problem is, I've never seen Dean fight anyone quite like CRACRA. And I just think CRACRA, the question, is can someone do what you've done from moving forward and pull the trigger on him and go after him? Because that really, for me, is the way, like as Yuddy had in that one round, as you've shown, you have to go after him.
Yep.
And that requires risk-taking as well. And although CRACRA doesn't have major power, and that's not his assets, speed, technique and that, you can't walk onto something. So I think it makes it, it's an exciting fight. And I do think Misfits if they don't make that, for whatever reason,
strip him.
It would destroy the credibility of the whole division, and that's something that I would be in the small council dead against, because it's like, you know, you've had a whole tournament to find a challenger for this guy. If you don't then have that out, well, what the hell has this all been for? So, you know, I think that they really want to make this, so I'm hoping that they do make it.
Listen, to quote Tyson Fury, little Cray Cray right now is the lineal champion.
Mm-hmm.
Dean might have the belt, but little Cray Cray's the lineal champion.
Little Cray Cray's proven a lot. I'll give him that.
He's beaten better men than Dean has. He's beaten better men than Dean has. And ultimately, listen, I've got a lot of respect for Dave Fogarty. Dean took that fight knowing that Dave Fogarty had never had a boxing match before. I think he was quite surprised as to how that one turned out. I think
Fogarty looked good, didn't he?
Fogarty did look good, and I think he's a good competitor. I'm hoping that he's ready, and me and him can get in the ring best part of early on next year, as soon as possible, really. So hopefully I'm hearing that that's the one that's next for me. But listen,
it's funny.
When that final does happen, I just want to put it out there now. When that final does happen, a lot of people last night were tweeting me and obviously comparing the fight between Yuddy and myself, Yuddy and Cray Cray to myself and Cray Cray and whatnot. And it's horses for courses. Just because, you know, that fight went one way, my fight went another way, that doesn't mean any indication of how a fight potentially between me and Yuddy would go, right? I know what I need to do in a rematch against Cray Cray, but ultimately, if for any reason Dean wants to continue, if he does fight in Misfits again, he fights Cray Cray and he loses Cray Cray, which is what I expect. I don't want Cray Cray. Fuck the rematch. I want Dean. That's the man that I want. So let me make that very clear.
Do you know what's funny? I'm being really nice about Cray Cray. To be fair, he was joking. Well, he was being sort of lighthearted. He was like, "Yeah, I fucked Jordy up in a boxing match." I'm like, mate, he was on about sparring me, right? And I looked at this and I thought, and I'm not trying to be a dick here, but like I thought, you were literally stood in front of my mate and you wouldn't even fucking trade with him in a proper boxing match, and you're talking about sparring me. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
The only thing people ever say when I'm stood next to you is, "Fuck me, Joey's small, isn't he?" So if I'm the size I am and I was the bigger man against Cray Cray and he was running against me, God knows what. But no, big respect to little Cray Cray, because as much as, listen, you make your own luck in life. Did little Cray Cray get lucky? Yeah, he got lucky because Walid Sharks, for whatever reason, couldn't fight and whatnot, and pulled out of his 7th out of 8 fights or whatever he's done now. But at the same time as that, little Cray Cray stepped in. He took the opportunity on a week's notice, and it's really come good for him in the end. So big respect to little Cray Cray, big respect to Yuddy Gang, no respect to Dean. Let's move on to the next one, which was Ben Williams against Jarvis. And I'll tell you what, this one again, this was the turning point of the card, wasn't it? Because we had just had a really good boxing display in little Cray Cray against Yuddy Gang. We move on to Ben Williams against Jarvis, and once again, these boys are showing a good level of boxing, and Ben Williams especially, he came out the fucking traps firing, didn't he?
Ben has star quality. I think there's something in this kid, you know, but and the ability is there. I thought his game plan was reckless. I thought, why are you throwing this many shots this early? Because you normally do that when you think you've got the guy going. But I didn't see that from Jarvis. And what I have seen from Jarvis throughout all of his fights is he takes tough fights.
Yep.
And he's got a good chin, a really good chin. I've seen him fucking spar Floyd Mayweather, actually. I don't know if you've seen that clip.
Seen it.
And the kid's tough. He's really tough, in fact. And I just thought to myself, you're blowing your load way early here, mate. And I thought you must have a massive amount of faith in your gas tank to be going on like this early. And to be fair, he did have Jarvis a bit like, whoa, fucking hell. Like, because when Gibb fought Jarvis, Gibb dominated Jarvis, but he didn't do that to him, if you get what I mean. So I was looking at Ben thinking that first round, I was like, wow, what a fucking first round. But then it all fell apart, didn't it? What did you make of the second round where you seen the energy drop and all of a sudden Ben bit in panic mode, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think was it the third that it finished in? I think it was the third.
Second or third, I couldn't remember.
I think it was the third. I think they had.
But there was a moment, really, where you're seeing his energy just go, didn't it?
I think that even in seeing that energy level drop of Ben Williams, I still thought that he won the round. He landed a cracking left hook, right hand. That was the best shot of the round for me. And my kind of thing was, I've learnt so many times through watching boxing in the past that the man that looks flashy and the man that looks more skillful isn't always the man that will go on to win the fight. Believe me. I remember watching Josh Kelly light up David Avanesian for a few rounds and then get broken down. And one thing is, with sparring at the level that Jarvis has sparred at, some could call it foolish. Some could say, well, hold on, you're not going to be able to do your best work against these guys. And therefore, when you're in a position to do that work, then you might not have done enough in the gym to be able to get off those shots and work on those combos and stuff like that. But what you will do is you will learn how to survive. The Mayweather gym is notoriously tough for sparring, and people really do need to learn how to survive in that gym. Ask Devin Haney when he was in there with Tank, right? So a guy like Ben Williams coming and flooding on the pressure for you early on, if you're Jarvis, I think is ideal. I think you're going to stay cool, calm and collective in that moment and understand that, you know what? When your gas tank starts to go a little bit, I'm really going to start to take over here. That's not to say that would have happened, but in the moment, it looked like that was happening.
However, it looked like it was happening, for sure.
It was definitely happening. It was definitely happening.
Yeah.
However, if at the end of the third round during the YUDDY against CRACRA fight, like I said, if you had stopped it there, I'd have gone, yeah, YUDDY was coming on strong. He was going to win that. So what I won't do is write off the possibility that Ben Williams could have got a second wind and could have continued to bank a few rounds.
I will. I'm writing that off.
You're writing it off, yeah?
You know why? Because the YUDDY CRACRA energy levels were comparable. The energy level of Ben Williams and Jarvis were completely completely opposite ends. Jarvis looked like he could do a fucking 10-mile run. Ben Williams looked fucking knackered to me. And when he went down, my brain went, he's going to do a Ben Whittaker. And I don't mean that like Ben Whittaker chucked it, but that's the way it's put across.
Yeah.
It's a theory. And I thought to myself, I feel like he's going to quit here immediately. The second he went down, I thought, you're fucked, you're knackered, and I feel like you might quit here. Now, again, I don't know if that's what happened because I don't know if his fucking ankle's fucked or not, right? And apparently it is. But my first thought was, he might look for a way out here because this looks like Jarvis is going to have his way with him from this point onwards, and he's got no energy left, and he's a sitting duck. And when he did quit, I just thought, I'm not saying he quit purely because of the gas tank. Yes, the ankle might be fucked, but it didn't look good on the eye to the viewer. It looked like, could you have continued? Probably.
That energy level you speak about there, that's the comparable thing to the Ben Whittaker fight, isn't it? Because it's not so much that the fighters in question were doing badly. They were doing fine. They were doing well. But it was the fact that we were looking at it and we were going, you look zapped. You look really
We've seen this before in boxing where the tide's turned. One fighter, the fight isn't going the way he thought it was going to go. Oh, sorry. Fucking my head went there. One fighter thought it isn't going the way he thought it wanted to go. And then you think to yourself, you get an injury, do you chuck it? Do you chuck it? And we've seen it loads of times before. So for me, it just felt like maybe that's what happened. But I don't know. I'm not his fucking doctor, but it didn't look good.
Well, Jarvis entertained the rematch. Jarvis, I didn't know much about Jarvis apart from watching that, obviously, the Gibb fight and the Floyd Mayweather spar and whatnot, but comes across as a real gentleman. First thing he did was got on the mic and he said, like condolences to Ben. He's obviously injured himself. Now, in the moment, he didn't look bad. I've seen some screenshots since, and it does look like he very much goes up, bends the toe back, and then
fair enough,
doing so forces the ankle.
I take it back. I'm talking shit.
However, despite Jarvis being respectful, a member of Jarvis's team, I think it's actually his brother, posted some footage that I sent to you where he's pretty much showing Ben Williams walking along, and his sort of his motion is that Ben Williams was walking along fine, and he could have continued his fight.
It's hard to say, isn't it? Like whenever this happens, but I would like to say that one ran back because Ben looked fucking great. And Jarvis looked like he was going to, even still, Jarvis did look like he was going to win that fight. And I think there's still that question there of what if Ben now trains a bit harder, gas tank up, and actually paces the fight properly? Yep. Can he win this? I think Ben's one of the more talented fighters on Misfits, and I'd like to see him apply that.
Well, it's funny that you speak about this because if Ben has rolled his ankle and whatnot, a sprain, a strain, it's going to be a little bit of time before he might be able to come back. He might not be back within the first quarter of 2025. And if you're Jarvis, considering you've been out of the ring, I think he might have had a little warm-up fight, but on Misfits, he's been out of the ring since that fight against B-Dave, I believe it was. We went to it, didn't we? You was on commentary. I was drunk.
Jarvis versus B-Dave.
I can't really remember it.
Yeah,
Jarvis
you were on the
B-Dave.
Mega Pints.
I was on the Mega Pints, yeah. So either way, that was a long time ago, right? So if you're Jarvis, I think you're looking to get back in there straight away. And for me, it moves us nicely on to the next fight. A man around that weight division who I really do think we need to start seeing tested against some of the better sort of fighters in that weight division is DEJI. So obviously DEJI had a kind of last minute opponent. He was announced to be on the card without an opponent announced, and it ended in quite weird fashion, didn't it? There was the knockdown that was ruled a slip. I don't know how the referee ruled that one a slip. It was the punch that sent him over, whether he was off balance or not. Definitely the punch that sent him over. And then there was a really horrific head clash, which meant that the opponent had to go down and couldn't continue. What did you make of that?
So DEJI, and I think everyone feels the same way about DEJI. You love him, right?
Yeah.
I've met DEJI plenty of times. I had him on my podcast back in the day. A really lovely, really funny, likable guy, but equally frustrating because there is talent there, but his application, his work ethic is piss poor, and what is mad is he got into really good shape because he had this bet on with his brother that he couldn't get a six-pack. And he didn't quite make it, right? Bear in mind that his brother was betting him like £1 million he couldn't get a six-pack. Oh, this is rich people shit. You know what I mean? Fucking hell. How mental. And he nearly got the six-pack, but he didn't quite get a six-pack, right? So like a lot of people trolled him for that. But I thought, well, at least he's got in shape, which will help him with his fighting. He turned up completely out of shape again. I'm like, how can you go from losing all that weight into a training camp for a boxing match and still turn up chubby again?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And that's when it all makes sense because obviously I'm in the small council and without dishing too much of the dirt, I don't think DEJI wanted a hard fight, right? Yeah. Let's just say that.
Yep.
And although there was people pulling out, the people who pulled out were also completely never had a fight in their life. So he was still wanting an easy match, no matter what the scenario was. And it's frustrating because technically DEJI's been taught really well how to box by King Kenny's brother. He knows a lot, right? He knows the game inside out, taught him well. But it's the application, it's the hard work. It's, DEJI used to get trained cardio-wise from his strength and conditioning from Leon.
Right.
Leon beasts people.
Yeah.
And Leon would have got him in shape. But Leon, he's avoided Leon for that reason, probably. So he's just a frustrating guy because we on Misfits, if you're not in a competitive fight, then what the fuck are we doing? What is the point? You're wasting our time as the viewer because that was shit. And you're wasting your own time because what are you really getting out of this other than money? And DEJI doesn't really need money, let's be real, right? So I just don't see the point in DEJI fighting if he's not going to take on a fight of a reasonable level of competition. For example, Alex Wasabi has a win over DEJI. And there's a score to settle. There's a reason to train on. There's a threat there. Alex Wasabi can box, and it's a similar level. And DEJI's improved a lot since then. Take that fight, and I just think I respect DEJI as a. I've always liked DEJI and respected him, but this is not respectable. You know what I mean? And I don't want to see him in there unless he's really willing to test himself. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, my advice would be to straight back into camp. Obviously, like you say, train by daily. He's got a good team around him. I've actually got a sparring partner that I used to spar on a weekly basis, and every now and again he'd blow me out on a couple of hours' notice and say, "I've just had the call to go and spar DEJI and whatnot." And this is before I was boxing on Misfits, and I used to pick his brain. As you do, it's always the ego comes into it. I go, is he any good then? What's he like compared to me? Stuff like that and whatnot. And by all accounts, and this guy's good that I'm on about. This sparring partner's good that I'm on about. And by all accounts, Deji's good. Deji's good. So
he is good, and that's why I'm frustrated, because he's got the talent, he's got the personality, he's got the star level with the social media. He could have some great fights, and I can't help but think in 10 years he's going to look back and think, well, fuck me, I didn't make the most of that. I could have had some really good memories, you know, all for really. This is him, you know, he's a bit fearful of getting in there unfit and getting, you know, into deep waters. But that, if you can't be asked to train, then what the fuck are you doing, mate? Because he took on a lad who was 0-5, who didn't have a fucking clue how to box, and the kid still took 2 rounds off of him. And you're seeing Kenny's brother in the corner fucking giving it to him, and I'm like pissing myself laughing at him, thinking, what on earth are you letting him do to you, Deji? What are you doing? So, you know, and he puts out this post afterwards. And he goes, you know, a bit of a wake-up call. Now I'm going to apply myself. KSI, his own brother, posts this on his story. He goes, he says this every time. We're losing interest in that. Like this whole, will Deji apply himself or won't he? Like, no, he's not. So I think this is just really more about him deciding, do I actually want to fucking do this or not? Because as a fan, that was a waste of a fight. And as someone who wants Misfits to do well, we had a couple of good fights there, right? Even though Ben Williams went the way it went, that was a good level. CRACRA, good level. That was a massive letdown in the middle of a card. And the product of Misfits suffers by allowing this. And I think Mams should just say to Deji, you're either going to get a hard fight or fuck off, mate, because you know, you're better off being in the audience and enjoying yourself and not putting people at home are just, you know, this is hurting the product.
What was a letdown for the card and for a lot of people that were looking forward to this card was obviously the fact that initially we were told that HS Tiki Toki was going to be having his second Misfits fight on the card. It was on, it was off, it was on, it was off. Either way, the fight never ended up happening. Before we get into what did end up happening, I don't actually know the guy's name, so I should have done my research, but shout out the guy that was supposed to fight HS Tiki Toki, because I've been in that situation before when you've turned up to, you know, I'm on about my days in the unlicensed scene. It'd be I'd turn up to the venue on the day and someone wouldn't turn up. This guy flew halfway across the world and the guy turned up and still didn't get in the ring with him. So really, really feel for that guy.
He should get paid for that.
Yeah, I feel so, and I feel that they should definitely make a slot for him on an upcoming show so that he has a opportunity to showcase, you know, what he was preparing for. But in terms of HS Tiki Toki, he is going to be taking on a good friend of ours in Wade. Now, first of all, I've got to say, right, I grew up loving WWE. Like, I was obsessed with WWE as a kid. And it's funny, right? Because when people stop me, right, it always depends on age range, and I can always guess where they're going to go. So nowadays, I'll be completely honest with you. Most of the time, people stop me and go, "You're true Geordies, mate, ain't ya?" But but a lot of the time, it always used to be, "Oh, Chelsea, whatever, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube." Whenever someone young comes over, it's Misfits. You're Joey from Misfits and whatever, right?
Cool.
So the younger audience are locked in, man. They are engaged. Yeah. And as much as I saw some certain tweets online and stuff saying, it's a bit cringe and whatever, you got to remember the audience you're catering for. And I thought the promo that they did there for bringing Wade back into the Misfits scene was really, really good. And it's something that me and you have spoke about ourselves in terms of, like, I understand that there's underlying problems and whatnot, and they're problems that run a lot deeper than I have any knowledge of myself. But in terms of the guys like, obviously, yourself and Wade as well being involved in this scene, it's not something that should happen. It's something that, for Misfits boxing's sake, needs to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. Like, obviously, whenever you try and do WWE promos, it is a little bit, cringe for the older audience. But I thought KSI did a great job in the way he set it all up. And you know what's clever about the KSI, right? He fucking knows how to play at the internet, right? So he's mentioning this influencer. He's mentioning his product. He's mentioning, because he knows everyone is going to blow this up even bigger because I'm mentioning these people. And it's got nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
He just understands how to inflate the clip that's going to go on social media from this. The man's a master, right? So credit to KSI. And look, Wade has had his piece to say about KSI. KSI had his piece to say about Wade. I love them both. I think they're both great guys. But this happens sometimes in social media, and it's a competitive place, and there was disagreement. But what Mams has done here is a Vince McMahon move, which is putting personal opinions aside, disagreements aside, and gone, would the people love this? Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
So he's putting himself, his own ego to one side and done what's best for the fans. And I don't think Mams gets enough credit for how often he thinks about the fans. There was disagreements in the past with his son Gib, who we'll talk about later. Put that to one side and make sure he fought on Misfits and looked after him. So
Joe Weller,
Mams has always tried.
I've seen it a few times.
Yeah, he wants to do what the fans want. Yeah. He wants to make everyone happy. And as a viewer, sat at home watching Wade walk out like that, I was really happy for him because it's his moment, you know what I mean? To be like, I'm back. And everyone's, going crazy on social media because no one expected it. Some of us had an idea. But it was a beautiful moment. And I think when you look at two characters like HS Tiki Toki and Wade, that is going to gel really well on an entertainment level, on the shit talk. And when you see them, side by side, both big dudes. I think this is a cruiserweight fight, so around that 200-pound mark-ish. And we've never seen Wade fight before. Wade does know a lot about boxing. So that immediately has a lot of intrigue. He's got a huge following. You've got HS Tiki Toki, also a huge following. And we've seen from one fight, obviously the competition wasn't great in his first fight, but HS Tiki Toki is a hell of an athlete. He's got quick hands. He's got power. Wade hasn't come in here and gone, give me an easy one, right? DEJI's on his what fight? And he's still going for 0-5 people. Wade basically has come into Misfits and gone, give me the toughest fucking problem you've got. And for that, everyone has to respect Wade because, anything can happen when you're in there with a guy like HS Tiki Toki who's got knockout power, and obviously he's a bit wild when he's in there. Wade has put himself right in the fire immediately. So I got a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I know myself from when we were out in LA and whatnot, and obviously we're training in the gym and speaking to Wade. Wade's a fit guy. I know Wade hasn't boxed, but Wade's an athlete. Wade's still an athlete. I think he played college football, didn't he? But I was talking to him, and I won't reveal. I kind of remember what sort of times he was saying to me about sprints, 5K times, things like that. So Wade is going to be, obviously, having only fought George Fenton, the toughest test that HS Tiki Toki is going to have had on Misfits. And the thing is as well, like, what you got to remember is one of sort of HS's viral moments has blown up from a street fight, right? The thing of a street fight is you don't have time to think. You don't have anticipation. You don't have 8 weeks of training hard and dieting and thinking about the fight and pressure and promotion and whatnot. It kicks off and you're involved in it straight away. So as much as I saw the clip of HS talking about it and saying, I just hope he doesn't pull out, I don't know. It's pretty rich coming from HS, to be honest. I think that could be said on both sides because HS has been scheduled for three fights this year and he's only had one of them. So I think that this fight is one that HS needs to really, really make sure he's locked in and training for, because one thing that Wade will do is Wade will show up and Wade won't have the same demeanor and the same lack of energy about him that George Fenton had. No offense to George Fenton, bless him, really nice fella by all.
He didn't want to be there, did he?
He comes across as, but he was shitting himself
from
the build up. And as a fighter, you can take one look at another man and you can smell it on them. You can smell fear, and it's very easy to go into a fight confident when you can do that. I've been in that situation before. Whereas one thing is Wade will come game. Now, what we do know is athleticism-wise, power-wise, sharpness-wise, HS looks good, man. And I think that this will bring out the best in him. But one thing that if he's going to take any advice, if he's watching or whatever, you're going to need to be fit. You're going to need to make sure that you can do the rounds and you've got good cardio, which maybe he has. Maybe we just haven't seen that so far. So I'm buzzing for that one. Really looking forward to it. Let's move on swiftly to Salt Pappy, because I'll tell you what, right? I really thought he was up against it in this fight. I've watched King Kenny, obviously, on Kingpin. I've watched his career on Misfits so far. He came short against Anthony Taylor, who is notoriously a spoiler. But in terms of pound for pound technique and boxing fundamentals, King Kenny is a guy that, even despite the loss last night, I still rate right at the top there. So for Salt Pappy to come in there, I think that there was still a bit of an unknown quantity element around Salt Pappy. We know that Salt Pappy had looked unreal against some of the lesser level guys on the way up. Then he was thrown in too quickly against Anthony Taylor. And despite me being very confident that he was one of the best in the scene and definitely one of the guys that I gravitate towards watching, this was the acid test. How do you think he did?
It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And again, echo what you said. Kenny, the reason it was so beautiful is Kenny is one of the best guys, you know? And when Salt Pappy did lose that fight to AT, I think it was a good learning experience for him, right? He wasn't as fit as he should have been. And also AT did the tactics he did, which I wasn't a fan of at the time, right? It wasn't a proper fight, that. But I think it's helped him a lot. And in this fight, I felt like his tactics were really good. Salt Pappy was on the edge of distance, understanding that Kenny probably has one of the best jabs in the game. And kind of like what KSI did to Tommy Fury, in that he was either all the way out or all the way in. And he would just blitz him and close the distance. And, you know, it wasn't like he was really hurting. He wasn't really hurting Kenny early, but he was winning those rounds. And it felt like Kenny was out of answers pretty early on. I remember looking at Kenny thinking, what are you doing here? Because you're on the edge of range, you're not being very aggressive, and you're not, you know, getting a lot off here. And Pappy, he's taken these rounds. Now, maybe you're waiting for him to fade. But because there was that big talk about the 6 rounds, 5 rounds, there was a lot of chat about that. And I genuinely was just sort of unsure. And ironically, after Kenny had sort of been a bit frozen on the outside, it was when he started coming in to close the distance. And I know he knows how to close the distance because his jab is so good. You walk in with your jab. You get your jab going and you shoot your way in, right? But he didn't do that. I don't know what he was doing at the time, but you know, when some fighters just, they're sort of, they're putting their hands out there to create, you know, a picture, but it wasn't threatening enough. And Pappy didn't believe what the story he was selling him. And Pappy just rattles this left hand into the chin. And it was, I mean, you had to watch it. I've seen it from like a few different angles now to see. It was like a phantom punch, and not for the first time with Salt Pappy, where it must just clip the chin, because Kenny's head's right down and it just clips the chin. And people suggested that there was an elbow there, but when you look at the way the arm travels through, the elbow wouldn't have done anything to him. It might have slightly grazed his cheek on the way out, but it was the knuckles that took that chin down. Yeah. And Salt Pappy, for me, in terms of the influencer boxing game, look, I kind of put you and some of the lightweights that we've mentioned earlier in a different category, because CRACRA had been fighting for fucking years before they started off. He's not a crossover boxer. He's a boxer. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And that, to a certain degree, should he even be in crossover boxing? But for the influencer boxers who started off at 0 and are now here, I think Salt Pappy is the most possibly naturally gifted boxer we've seen, who's just picked it up. And that left hand, especially for the size of him, he's not Kenny's taller than him, shredded, ripped. And for him to land that on a guy as good as Kenny was amazing.
Mate, I still don't think Salt Papi's in the right weight division. And the evidence would suggest that clearly he is, because he's just knocked out King Kenny.
He should be lighter, though, in my opinion.
I think he could box at welterweight. I'm looking at Jarvis, and I'm looking at Ben Williams last night, and they don't look a size above a Salt Papi. So, yeah, absolutely unreal. And obviously couldn't happen to a nicer guy as well. I think I definitely echo what you said there in terms of, from someone who picked up a pair of gloves from the first time and started boxing, he's come such a long way. And when you said about putting us in that level above, I'd put Salt Papi in there. I'd put him in there alongside of us. And what does that say? Saying that he's had 6-7 fights, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, I've had double that. Yuddy's had over 20, maybe even 30 now, whatever. CRACRA's had that, and Salt Papi's had 6-7 fights, and I would put him up there. So again, it's one of those which is that this is why I believe that Misfits is great, man. It's really, really great. And obviously, since the emergence of Riyadh season, Turkey Al Sheikh coming into boxing, I think a lot of boxing fans are starting to understand something that myself and that I know you have understood for a long, long time, which is when you make 50-50 matchups, when you make great matchups and competitive fights, there actually are no losers in the long run. There will be a man who has his hand raised on the night, but there are no losers in the long run. So I am no less excited to see King Kenny next time out now, just because he suffered a knockout. Because in 50-50 matchups, that's where really you see who is tested the most and who's the most willing. And if you're willing to go into those sort of fights, then I'm excited to see you every time after. So for Salt Papi, just a final one on him. Who would you like to see him face next? Because I think that the next fight we're going to speak about might sort of determine that.
I would without doubt want to see him fight Gabe after Gabe won against Slim. Obviously, we'll go on that. But to be fair to Kenny, just before we move on, I don't think that he was at his best in that fight. He just didn't, as I say, he was a bit frozen. You look at the Whindersson-Nunes fight, obviously Whinderson's a totally different level, but I know he can fight a bit better than that, and I think that that's where, you know, as much as a loss is a gutting thing, he can come back. Like you've just said, there is, because this is a storyline for him now, redemption. He's been defeated in a way he hasn't been defeated before, and I'm sure he can come back from it. But yeah, for me, maybe you do Kenny versus Slim, because they obviously, Slim lost the main event. But absolutely, there is no other fight to make. It is Anisan Gibb versus Salt Papi. And for the reason being is, although Salt Papi lost to Slim, I think Salt Papi has come back so much stronger since that fight. And not just that, when you look at the way Salt Papi, what he did to Slim in those first couple of rounds, before his gas tank went, the level of Salt Papi is very, very high, right? So I think that is a brilliant matchup, because size-wise, they're a good match. And I think it'll be a lot better fight than Gibb versus Slim was, because that was the discrepancy in size. It didn't look nice on the eye for me, whereas Salt Papi and Gibb, and what a fight that'll be, because they're both so good.
Yeah, I think in the main event, the styles didn't gel all that well. I think KSI gave you a really good run for your money in terms of biased commentary.
It made me feel good, you know, because everyone was giving KSI shit the next day. And I was like, God, it's really nice not commentating anymore. I'm loving this. Thank God.
No, I'm only joking. I thought your commentary was bang on. So the fight itself, obviously, look, I wouldn't say I scored too many rounds to Slim, to be honest. I would say that out of the 8 rounds, I maybe gave 6 to Gibb. Would you say that's wide, or would you say? To be
honest, Mams asked us in the group chat, because we do like a bit of scoring as we go, and Mams was like, "Where are you at with it?" And I think after the first 2, I think Slim might be winning. Maybe 2 up here, maybe. First one I gave to Slim, maybe the second. But after that, it just felt like Gibb's roughhouse style and his will to win was just overwhelming Slim. And Slim didn't make the most out of his attributes. Like, you look at that reach, where is your jab? Why are you not, you know, a certain dominance with the jab, you know. And I felt like, although there wasn't a whole lot of action, that was one thing that I felt like was a bit frustrating, was there was a lot of just moving around and not a lot going on. And when they would clash, it would be inside fighting. It would be in the clinch, which is really, Gib can do that bread and butter style, which might be why he could be a huge problem for Sol PAPI, because I think that's what Sol PAPI kind of struggled with against AT. But it was Gib's fight. It was Gib's style of fight. And I just didn't understand why Slim allowed that to happen in the way it did. But credit to Gib, he's got this will about him and this determination, and he just put it on him, didn't he? And he just roughhoused him.
Yeah, I think there comes a moment in most fights when your corner's got to say to you, you need a stoppage here. You're too far behind on the card. You need to either stop him, you need to drop him, something like that. I'm not contrary to what was said in the corner, but I kind of feel like that maybe needed to be said to Gib. I remember after the fourth against CRACRA, my coach saying to me, you probably need to stop him, sort of thing. I think you've won the fourth and you need to win the fifth big here, sort of thing. So I'm like, right, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try and stop him in that round. And ultimately I fell short. I wasn't able to do so, but the intent was there, you know? And I think that Gib had acquired such a margin on the scorecards to anyone viewing it that Slim really did need to go for it in them last two rounds. And maybe it seemed a little bit like he was sort of happy to go to points and live to fight another day. But saying that can somewhat sound disrespectful, and I don't mean it in that way, because fuck me, there's people that would have took the shots from Gib. I remember specifically, and it draws back to what we said about the Salt PAPI knockout. Anyone that boxes knows that you see them big looping swinging shots, when they connect with you, quite a bit of the power has already disintegrated by the time that shot lands on you. Whereas those short shots, man, they're the ones that hurt. King Kenny found that out last night. And those short inside shots were a lot of the ones that Gib was landing on Slim. So Slim showed good heart and Slim showed a great chin last night.
Absolutely.
But he'll
both
learn
of them
a lot
took some
from
good shots.
Yeah.
I think toughness-wise, that's where this was impressive.
Yeah.
But as a boxing spectacle, it wasn't what I was hoping for. And it did just leave me feeling like, you know what, I don't really want to see a rematch between these two, because I just don't think it gels. It was too tumbleweedy, you know, in the cartoon where you just see the cartoon characters just scrapping, and there wasn't a lot of clean boxing. Whereas I think in all of Gib's previous fights, yes, he likes to put the pressure on, but generally you get that clean boxing like he did against Jarvis. Same with Slim's knockouts do tend to come from him just, you know, getting on the inside sometimes. But I think that the Sol PAPI Gib stylistic matchup is going to be way nicer to watch. And that, for me, Gib's number one influencer boxing now, after, like, in terms of, you know, his social media profile, in terms of, you know, behind KSI and Jake Paul, he is that guy, right? He's just won the title. But Sol PAPI has been a bit of a superstar, and he's been born out of this experience. And I really want to see that fight, because for me, if Gib then wins that fight as well, he's basically defeated everyone he needs to really have that claim solidified as like the undisputed champion.
And to get him a shot at maybe a KSI. We saw the trash talk going on between those guys all week, and I can't help but feel like usually there's not smoke without fire. Maybe there's something building up that we could see in 2025 there. One thing I would say as a takeaway, we've had 2 pay-per-view events this year, and in my personal opinion, there's been great moments in both of them. What I don't believe that either have done as sort of lived up to the Prime card as much, which obviously we did a watch along in the old studio for last year. I think that was when you obviously had DEEN against Walid. You had loads of great fights on that card. Slim vs Salt PAPI, KSI against Tommy Fury. But what last night's pay-per-view did, and I think this is really good, as well as serve up some real good entertainment and excitement, is it has really, really whetted the appetite for what is to come in 2025. Like when we speak about these potential matchups now, the lightweight tournament, the winner possibly going on to fight DEEN if he's able to get in the ring and do so, the emergence now of PAPI really propelling himself back onto the Grand Slam stage and being one of the biggest names there, Gibb now back in influencer boxing, and KSI announcing that in the first quarter of next year. I think that last night set the stage perfectly for Misfits Boxing to have a huge 2025 now, hasn't it?
1,000,000%. And the final announcement of the night was by KSI, who said the winner of Darren Till, Tommy Fury, he's going to fight them. Nice. So that's whoever wins that, that's a massive, massive fight. And I'm really excited to see that as well. We need KSI fighting for Misfits to be at its best. So to lose him for a whole year, I think has been a blow to Misfits. And I think what's helped Misfits is kind of the discovery of people like yourself, the resurgence of PAPI, Gibb coming in. But now I feel like we're ready to go full throttle. So it's going to be good, mate.
I can't wait for it. I've got itchy knuckles. I can't wait to get back in there myself too. But we will wait for another day to get some news on that. People, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below on, obviously, Thursday night's Misfits card. Once again, huge shout out to my friend, the true Geordie, for joining me today. Make sure you are subscribed to The Pain Game. It is linked in the description. All of the big fights we are covering on there, and we've got some huge news coming from there very, very soon in regards to some of the big fights coming up. So make sure you're locked in, subscribe to The Pain Game, and I will see you all in the next one.